Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of my podcast. Säga Sverige. It's usually in Swedish because we do it in Sweden generally. But today we have a guest that I found on Twitter Spaces actually, and have the pleasure to have on today's episode because we have a person with a very nice experience and deep knowledge about what's happening in the situation around the Zionist entity and the area in the Middle East. Because Raed, our guest today, is a person that himself is from Lebanon, which is a direct neighbor and under direct threat of the entity. So, Raed, it's a pleasure to have you on today. How are you feeling?
Thanks, Ali. Yeah, I'm all right, man. It's. Thank you for asking me to be on your show.
It's a pleasure because, as mentioned, I heard you speak on the in the Twitter or X spaces, and you have such deep knowledge and a great outlook from, I guess, your close proximity to the area of the entity. And what we learn here in Sweden, where I live, is that in Lebanon you have a group that is fundamentally, inherently anti-Semitic, doing so-called terrorist acts on the entity itself, which is a group called Hezbollah. But my question to you, as you're a person who lived in Lebanon and have witnessed this, could you tell me a bit of your history? How long have you been living in Lebanon? Is it all your life? And what have you been witnessed? Is it really the resistance group, as I call it? Are they really inherently anti-Semitic and just hating on the religion of the people in Israel, and that's why they're doing this violent resistance? Or could you just explain your experience
Yeah,
as a
yeah.
citizen of
No,
Lebanon?
thanks for this question. This is a very important question, especially that what I've witnessed on my travels to the West is that the Western information sphere, let's call it, the mainstream media, the main story that is disseminated to the Western audience, whether in Europe, in the United States, Australia, New Zealand, is very far removed from the truth. Look, I was born in Lebanon. I was a child when when Israel invaded Beirut, invaded the whole. So the southern side is the side on the borders with so-called entity Israel. So in 1982, after they had occupied part of the southern Lebanon in 1978, 1982, they decided to invade the whole thing, and they got to Beirut. And I was a child when I saw these tanks for the first time, these Merkava tanks, right? And they had, you see these tanks as a child, and you don't understand, but you're a little bit aware that this is an enemy and all that. You even see on the tanks the Star of David, and then you ask your parents, what is that? And since childhood, it was always very clear that our problem with Israel is the ideology of Zionism, meaning that these people, that whole project of the Zionist project, is basically that people came out from another continent to take a piece of land that they claim it's their own. And the problem with that is that this Zionist ideology never compromised. Even when they understood that this land has owners, which are the Palestinians, there was never any compromise to amend that ideology, meaning, all right, let's try to exist with them. Let's try to share the land. There was none of that. It was from the start, we need to remove these people, right? So I grew up in a city in Beirut where there was a lot of Palestinian refugees. My mother used to help a lot of Palestinian women. My father was engaged into the Palestinian cause because it was part of our lives. And then eventually Israel tried to occupy Lebanon and took over until they actually besieged Beirut for 88 days. I remember people were struggling to get bread, water, all that, under the excuse that they're there to root out the PLO, Arafat, the resistance, the Palestinian resistance. They always tell you it's about a group. They tell you it's about Hamas. It is about the PLO. It is about Hezbollah. So out of that time, a bunch of guys in the southern Lebanon decided to resist. Just regular, everyday guys, people of the villages. This is what it is about. You come to my land, then I need to fight you. Now, who's going to give me weapons? Because military assets are very expensive. Even if you're a political party, it takes a lot of money. So it always has to be sponsored by another nation. Now, unfortunately, many of the Arab nations in the area, due to the bullying of Washington, they never gave us weapons. So it was, or gave them weapons, because it's Hezbollah in that case. So that bunch of guys that started in 1982 defending their country eventually were supported by Iran, because right after 1979, the change of government in Iran with the Iranian Revolution, there was something ideological with that. And ideological, I'm not talking about the religion, ideological in terms of fighting empire, fighting empirical projects, being sovereign, having dignity, pushing back against them, that whole vibe. And also very important, that comes from the religion of especially the Shia sect, is standing by the oppressed. It is a fundamental principle within Iran. And who were the oppressed? In that case, it was the southern Lebanese. It was the Lebanese. So this is how Hezbollah started. Now, I'll say this to your listeners. Look, fundamentally, the whole Palestinian story. I know in the Western information sphere that mostly Zionists dominated. They like to mishmash the story, but fundamentally, what the story is about stolen property. Period. It's about somebody from a foreign place coming to steal your land, and then as long as you fight back or you insist on your right to take back that stolen property because it is yours, the end generation after generation, you keep doing that, then eventually you have to be able to take it back. And that is fundamentally what the story is. Now, these people that stole the Palestinian lands, they could have been Rastafarian, they could have been Buddhist, they could have been Muslims and Sunnis as well. Nothing would have been different. Not one thing of the way the Levant and the people in Palestine, Lebanon have been doing would have been any different if it was Muslim, if the Zionist project was a Muslim project or a Buddhist project. This has to be fundamentally clear, because what they do in the West is they always want to tell you that it is a religious thing. It's like, because they are Muslims and we are Jewish, that is why they hate us. It has nothing to do with that. There was Jews in Lebanon. Levant had a Jewish community in Iraq, a Jewish Lebanese community. Syria had Jews. And in the Levant, in that fertile crescent that starts from Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, parts of Jordan, Palestine, that area has been civilized, has been inhabited constantly. And actually, if you do this exercise, you go on Google and you say, the oldest constantly inhabited cities in the world, you'll find the top 10. 9 out of the 10 are in the Levant. So we have existed in that area where it was pagan, then monotheistic, then Judaism came, then Christianity came, then Islam came. And then we understand that these differences in how you worship is just a personal thing. No one cares about it. I remember when I was a kid in school, sincerely, I didn't know who's Christian, who's Muslim, who's Sunni, who's Shia, we don't care. It's frowned upon. Actually, if you ask someone, what's your religion? It's like asking a woman her age. People frown on you. It's like, this is too personal. Like, why are you asking this? This is the way we exist, because it's been, I mean, Lebanon alone has 18 sects officially recognized with members of parliament. 18 sects, right? Half of them Muslim, half of them Christian. So fundamentally, what I'm trying to say is that since a young age, I understood that the Zionist project is existential threat to my nation, the sovereignty of my people, and we have to fight against it. And then this is where my support comes, because Hezbollah ended up becoming a serious fighting force. Sorry about the dog. They ended up they ended up being able to kick out the Israelis in the year 2000 after 18 years of resistance, and they were able to survive and stay strong and liberate the land. And that is why the popularity of Hezbollah is large amongst the Arab nations. Then in 2006, the Israelis, they do hold a grudge. They do hold a grudge, I tell you that. And they also insist on their project, Greater Israel. That is why Israel doesn't have official borders. If you go to the UN, You have official borders of each and every country in the world. It's like, yeah, this is the border of whatever country, except Israel. You tell them, all right, get me your files. Like, do you have the borders, the official borders of the? They'll tell you, no, they've never presented official borders
Yeah. On that point,
because they,
yeah, sorry.
yeah, now go ahead, because they believe that this whole area is theirs. They,
Yeah, I
and this
wanted
is
to
what we
say
have to believe.
that Tom Barak recently said that the whole Middle East is just a bunch of tribes, and
Right?
yeah, so
Right?
they don't have real borders. Even he just
Yeah.
admitted it.
Yeah. Yeah. They fundamentally in political lingo, that'll be the complete annihilation of the Sykes-Picot Agreement.
Yes,
So
exactly.
for your audience, so in around 1916, when the Ottoman Empire collapsed and the colonial powers came, France and Britain, they sat down probably over a glass of wine and they said, "All right, we fundamentally we need that patch for the European Jews that we're going to call Palestine, let's say, and then the Lebanon, because it was majority Christian. Well, let's give it you, France. You can have it." And then Syria would be Syria, and then so they drew these borders, and they're called the Sykes-Picot Agreement, where that land, before the concept of the nation states, even in Europe, there wasn't nation states. It was city states, right? So you had Damascus, you had Tyre, Sidon, Byblos, and that's what I say. These cities have been constantly inhabited. Damascus alone is 9,000 years of constantly being inhabited. And also, on that point, before we move forward, because it's very important, because in the West, they sell you that idea that Islam came, that the
Mm.
Muslim conquest came. It's like, all right, let's unpack that. What came are 30, 40, 50,000 soldiers to a land with millions. They came and then they created a new governance system where the people of the land were like, this is an upgrade. Maybe we should have that. And then eventually, a lot of people took on that religion. That became a religion, and then it became Muslims. It's not a case of how they display it to the West as if the genome, the DNA genetic of the people changed. There was never a time where you took people like Christianity went and then Islam came. It's like no, the people remained the same. The
Mm.
Levantines are the Levantines who have existed on that land for thousands of years. When a new religion comes in, people take it on. Like Christianity came, a lot of people became Christians. Then Islam came, a lot of people became Muslims, but they remain there's the same people of the land. So eventually, this is the I give these historic things just because, again, we cannot describe the story if we're living or if we're describing it from the Zionist information paradigm. You have to just bring the context to it. That's why I go into this. Yeah.
Yeah. So they would. You mentioned that when the Muslims came, what we learn here in the West is that it was a conquest, and then Islam is inherently against other religions. And if you're living in a Muslim caliphate, you're not allowed to be of another religion. And they use the same reason for that, saying here in Europe that Islam is not compatible with the European lifestyle or European societies. Would you, since you come from Lebanon and you mentioned now when you spoke that back in the day it was frowned upon to even ask about religion, what changed, and do you feel that Islam is that way since you have Muslims in Lebanon and you also have other
Got it.
religions? Could you explain your experience?
Yeah. First of all, like again, we don't like to personalize it, but I have to give this caveat when I describe this. I am a Christian. I'm Orthodox Christian. This is my faith, right? And uh, again, what you described is what the Zionists would love people to believe, that somehow Islam is not compatible with the West. Somehow that Islam is kind of the enemy, the boogeyman. Because in the old days it was the communists. The communists are coming. The communists, and the Cold War. Right now it's Islam, and it has been that since 9/11. When when 9/11 happened, a lot of these neocons, Zionists loved to make Islam the evil thing, right? But reality is not such. Again, because I live in Lebanon, I personally never felt any animosity from any Muslim. But to be fair, amongst the 2 billion or so Muslims in the world, there is a 5% to 7%, if I'm being generous, of Muslims that believe in an ideology that I call Islam, or like whatever, like fringe or whatever it is. That ideology is called Wahhabi Salafi Takfiri. What Takfiri means is that I'm allowed, using my religion, to claim that you are an enemy of God, and thus I give myself the permission to make you an enemy and even kill you. That ideology hardly represents, like, really, if I'm being generous, 7% of the Muslim world. Now, the rest of the Muslim world, Islam in general, first of all, the Muslims say, and I read the Quran, it says about Christ that it says that God says, basically in his book, God says, we have sent him with the Holy Spirit. That's not said about any of the prophets. So obviously, within Islam, Jesus Christ is revered as a serious prophet, one of them. And then there is a miracle also that he spoke as a baby. So Islam clearly says that Christ is something very special. Then, when it comes to the Virgin Mary, also there's a whole chapter about her, and it confirms a lot, and even 90% of the Christian story, that it was immaculate birth, and she got just pregnant. All of that is confirmed within Islam. So when Islam came with that conquest, that 50,000 soldiers came and then took over the ruling of the people, they said to the people who were Christians, yeah, Jesus is special. 100%. We believe in that. We believe in your stories. There is one fundamental difference, is that within Muslims, Jesus is not, when we say the Son of God, this is where philosophically and understanding is like, not the Son as in, yeah, God is the Father, and then He is the Son, then He is God. This is the philosophical differences, but there's no animosity about it. No Muslim ever says, I'm allowed to beat up or kill the Christian. None. This is not from the Levant. This is not from Islam. This is a fringe sect that existed in the Arabian Peninsula, and because of the petrodollar, it got promoted, and actually it got shipped to the West. It got shipped. You'll find them a lot in the West, unfortunately, but this is for political games, because at the end of the day, they want to create a boogeyman. And what better boogeyman than a guy that, thinks like that? But
Mm.
it's not the real Islam, 100% not.
Yeah. Yeah, you're totally right when you say that it got shipped to the West. Maybe you have heard about that notorious video where there was some members of that sect of Islam, that extreme sect of Islam, that had I think it was a Jordanian Air Force pilot in a cage, and then they
Right?
set that cage on fire. One of those guys were actually a young guy growing up here in Sweden, where I live. He was never ever in the Middle East before that whole group of takfiris came around. So he went from Sweden back to
Right.
Syria, I believe it was, and he participated in that whole video and that
Yeah.
whole thing. So yes,
Wow.
you're completely right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And talking about that video, tell me,
mm,
like, now that we're all, the general public is actually aware about something called PSYOP.
yes.
Yeah. How's that for a psyop? Like, how come that certain one event that took place was able to be portrayed all over the West and everywhere? I remember when these guys, came from Iraq, the Al Qaeda and all that, and they did these shenanigans. How it was projected all over, even on Twitter. It wasn't like, this is too violent, we shouldn't, or whatever. It was somehow, shown to the whole world. Whenever something like that happened, one has to ask themselves, who controls the media? Is it political motivated? Is there a political motivation into blowing up that thing to scare people and get them, what Chomsky calls it manufacturing consent. So
Mm.
everyone would feel like, oh, these are like terrible. We need to be scared. Maybe we need to send our armies. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So, yeah, but this is 100% a fringe sect, and it was exported to the West. I found it fascinating that although we understand where Al Qaeda came from, we understand that ideology that, had to do with 9/11 and that hatred and all that, and that called so-called jihad and all that. How come that same ideology that the West is supposedly anti, you get a cleric with these same thoughts being able to preach in a mosque in Europe? It never made sense to me. Like, what's up with that? So, yes, politics, unfortunately.
Mm.
But 100%, this does not represent Islam. Any guy, any person, any woman that traveled to the Levant, to the area, to Dubai, to Egypt, would very quickly understand that this is BS.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
not there. Yeah.
But so what happened in Lebanon in your lifetime where you went from having a society where it's fringed upon asking about religion, and how is it today? Because today I would believe it's not the same anymore,
No,
unfortunately.
it has changed. Unfortunately, it has changed. The first attempt at changing this was the civil war that Zionists, West, some Arab governments participated into creating a civil war in Lebanon for the benefit of Israel. And this was a time where the Lebanese population got split into Christians on one side and Muslims on the other side. Uh, it's a complex story. I don't want to go into it, but this is where that feeling started, where you have to look at the person from the other religion with vigilance and all that. Luckily, in 1991, that civil war ended, and then we were able to somehow get past it. But when Washington wants to inflame that divide, they can, unfortunately. I mean, look at the Sunni Shia divide. The Sunni Shia divide is 100% manufactured. They actually, in 2003, when they invaded Iraq, they understood it's the whole concept of divide and conquer, right,
Mm.
Ali?
Mm.
So they were like, all right, the bunch of Muslims we need to subdue and rule. How is the best way to do it? Let's divide them into fighting each other. So they were able to start creating, and also it was a policy of psyoping the Arab public, the Muslim public, into seeing Israel less as the enemy, and the manufactured enemy started becoming Iran all of a sudden. All of a sudden, with the help of Arab mainstream media as well, mind you, because at the end of the day, all these mainstream medias, they kind of they come into hierarchy where at the end Washington is the boss, and they understand it. From Al Jazeera, Al Arabiya, Al Hadath, these big mainstream medias in the Arab world understand who's boss. Like they know. Maybe in rhetoric sometimes you'll think that they're anti or whatever, they want to stand up. It's BS. So they were able to psyop the Arab population, the Muslim population, that it's no longer Israel. They just they tuned down the noise against Israel, and then they drifted up the volume against Iran. It's like suddenly, all of a sudden, since 2003, 2005 onwards, it was Iran, the Shia crescent, right?
Mm.
The Majus, whatever, all kinds of, and then the clerics of the court, like the clerics of the Sultan, some Muslim clerics, they join in, and that's Iran, it's Iran, it's Iran.
Yeah.
It was all manufactured. It was all manufactured in
But
Lebanon.
they would say that Iran is a real threat, and then they would also refer to Syria and say, look at what they did to, when using this sectarian rhetoric, they
Yeah,
would say, look at what they did to Ahl Sunnah in Syria. Somehow they never refer to what's happening to Ahl Sunnah in Palestine, but in Syria,
right, right.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
what was that about? Well, why do they?
Look,
Why
the
would the
whole.
Arabs portray Iran? You say that Washington is the
Oh
boss in the
man,
end.
look, it's complicated, but I say fundamentally, I'll tell you what it is
Yeah.
fundamentally. When you have most of the GCC countries, most of the large Arab rich nations are monarchist. They ruled by a monarchy. Um, they're not a democracy. And then suddenly, a neighbor, which is Iran, and a large neighbor, has a monarchy, and then the people revolt in 1979, and they go down with the monarch. He's a
Mm.
Western puppet, and then they overthrow the monarch. Now the monarchies next door will be like, "Who? if this
Yeah.
thing, if this thing,
Yeah.
if we
Spreads.
get, if we don't want our people to get that kind of ideas. Like this is
Hmm.
terrible." So initially, regardless of Sunni Shia, they didn't like that. Understandably so. They don't want any feelings of revolution, any feelings of the people saying, you know what, we need to run ourselves in a democracy and damn with the monarch. So it was existential. From 1979, the GCC countries were like, no, we need to do something about that. So this is where Washington, because Washington wants to rule the oils, the resources. They want to always be the hegemon, and then they had the Shah, who was their puppet, and actually loved Israel. Suddenly got overthrown, so Washington was alarmed and wanted to do something about that. And then the GCC countries and the Arab monarchs were like, yeah, same thing. So they aligned together to bring down that that experiment. It's like that's a bad experiment. We're not having that. So, and this is then of course they're going to use the Shia Sunni to tell their people. They're not going to tell the people, yeah, it's because we're worried about our ass. Excuse my language, our seat. We're worried about our seat.
Mm.
And America is not going to tell people, yeah, because we want the oil and gas. And the revolution said, no, this is our oil and gas. So they want to create something. And then so they started working on the Shia Sunni differences and fuel that. And then when Syria happened, and actually, it is people are waking up to the color revolution aspect of what took
Yeah.
place in Syria, 100%. And that color revolution aspect is, I know I jump around a lot, but you can stop me and ask
No, no,
anything.
perfectly good because it is a timeline that we're following, even though.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So what took place in Syria? Again, it's the same thing. Where in Syria, the Assad family, with all its bad stuff, because always when you have this kind of system, a lot of oligarchs and corrupt people latch on, and then it becomes somehow tyrannical because it has to become tyrannical to keep the rule. But it doesn't mean that doing away with it is a solution, because you get
Mhm.
chaos. And
Yeah.
this is what we see in most of the colored revolution. So in 2011, these are the sprinklers, sorry. In 2011, it was a CIA, MI6, intelligence operation to overthrow that government.
Yeah.
Now, whenever that government fought back, Western media were like, "Oh, he's Alawi. He's killing Ahl Sunnah, right?
Mm, mm.
To
But
get the people rallied."
was he sectarian, Bashar al-Assad in Syria? Was he a sectarian leader, favoring his own kind of sect?
Not, not really. If you look at the army, you look at all the generals, you look at most of the posts in the government. No, uh, organically, yes. I mean, it happens, but not. It wasn't a policy. Actually, Bashar al-Assad's system was very sectarian. All kinds of communities were existing in Syria in harmony. They had their rights. They had their representation in governments. Now, if you want to say like that undercurrent of oligarchic, nepotistic rule that wants to get rich, maybe it would push a contract here that's always there. I mean, that's there
Yeah.
in most governments actually.
Still
That's
today,
power
yes, even
corrupts
in
in
Europe. Yeah.
general, right? But he was a good guy. I mean, I know Syria. You can drive from Beirut to Damascus in 2 hours. One time I drove it 2 times. I was working there on a project. So security, you can, I swear, Ali, you can leave your car with your car keys inside. Women can walk any time of the day. It's completely secure. No crime rate and stabbings and all that thing you see all over the world and mainly in Europe. None of that existed. Everyone had jobs. That governance understood that if you give people jobs, stability ensues. And because the economy wasn't westernized, it was self-sustained from within. It was a good governance. Prices were cheap. Everyone gets educated by the government, university and school, medical care. I know friends who had cancer that used to drive to Syria to get their cancer medicine because it was 10% of what we sell it in Lebanon because of government subsidies. So, by any measure, it was good governance. Yeah, you had grievances, of course, of course. I mean, in the US, you have grievances. What
Yeah.
happened with that lady getting shot in the face
Yeah.
is if look, so to see the dichotomy, imagine that story that happened in the United States. Now take it and put it in Syria and go on CNN and say Bashar al-Assad is shooting people in their faces, and you get
Yeah.
people wild up, right?
Yeah.
That's the psyop part of it. Yeah.
Yeah, correct. They would have demonstrations in Europe, people screaming in Europe about, yeah, that lady in Syria, if that would happen in Syria. And then they would say, we
Right?
need a new leadership and we need revolution. And
100%. And
yeah,
all the feminist movements will be like that's a lady. They
yeah,
shot her because she's not covering her head. All kinds of
yeah.
stories. That's unfortunately this is what how media plays with us all as human beings all over the place, right?
But it's incredible the amount of mind control that they have on general people,
Right? Yeah.
how
Yeah.
they
I
can
actually
manipulate. Damn.
on that note, man, I read a book and I recommend it to you and to your listeners, viewers. I read it in 2006. It's written in 1978 by a guy called Jerry Mander. It's the heading of the book is Four Arguments Against Television, and it describes to you the human brain because he was a neuro scientist, and he describes what happens in the brain when a human being is put into the screen. Remember, 1978, there was just TV. There was no mobile phones. There was no laptops. There was no, and he says it takes the human being 45 minutes the first time to go into a hypnotic kind of state where the frontal cortex, that place of critical thinking, uh, gets asleep, and then you get thoughts downloaded into your subconscious without realizing your view of the world, your view of Russia, your view of whatever, all kinds of understanding, like women's view of the Prince Charming coming to rescue, living happy
Mm.
ever after. There's a lot of conceptions that we took on from TV without questioning. So what I'm trying to say is that these media giants, these policy makers, they understand how to hack our brains, right, and control our view of things, and they got it to a T. I'll tell you a quick story that is very important to know as well. In the 1920s, big tobacco in the United States noticed that they had the male market. So the men were smoking in the 1920s. The women weren't. It was frowned upon for a woman to smoke. And the big tobacco came to that guy. His name is Edward Bernays. He is credited with being the father of propaganda. So they came to Edward Bernays and they're like, we want to sell cigarettes to the women. Can you do something? Early days of advertising, Ali, like there's not hardly any. So yeah, what the guy did was use the emotions to sell you an idea. So the emotional appeal was he got beautiful models, and he chose the 4th of July, independence and all that. And he got these models and gave them the cigarettes. They used to be like a sort of a straw where you put the cigarette in and you hold it like that, and he held it like that. And took beautiful pictures, and then slammed it on the cover of all newspapers, and it said under it, "The torch of freedom." Right? Emotionally, women were like, "Yeah, freedom, yeah, wow, freedom, oh my God," emotional level, right? So, and then they got the women market like that,
Yeah.
like that. This tells
So
you, and
simple. Yeah.
that's the 1920s. So, then eventually they started using that technique in politics, and they call it PR. Like the Pentagon has a PR agency, The State Department has a PR agency, and I'll give you an example. In 2003, when they wanted to invade Iraq, the Pentagon slogan was Iraqi freedom.
Mm.
We're going to bring freedom to the Iraqis. So so that propaganda tool, that, if you will, advertising tool for products, started being used in politics to sway people's opinions on everything. And that is why Noam Chomsky wrote the book Manufacturing Consent. I
Mm.
can manufacture the approval of the people. And yeah, they play with us, but I see, I'm very hopeful, because like people like you, generation the Z, social media, people are like snapped out of it. It doesn't work much anymore. The last Psy-Op that happened in Bondi Beach in Australia, it was clearly a Psy-Op, and it was so amazing to me that I've been watching so many Psy-Ops pulled on the Western people that are half successful and successful, but then this one, well, the guy was still shooting everybody online, was like, ah, it's a Psy-Op.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. It's crazy.
they, they
Yeah.
have somehow they that voodoo thing that like they lost it. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But yeah, there's still people brainwashed, and there's still a long way to go. But we see that
yeah.
when we see through their bluffs, when they're bluffing, they go to harsher measures. You know, then they get to violence, and then they hurt you financially or whatever they do, and
Yes,
that's
yes,
their next
yes.
step. And we're seeing
Actually,
it in Europe.
yeah. To your point, 100% spot on, Ali. Actually, Klaus Schwab himself wrote an article in Time, I think in Time magazine, or another one, major print, a few days ago. And even Klaus Schwab was complaining that they're losing the narrative. But
Wow.
of course, he was putting it as misinformation is leading the people, of course.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But what he's fundamentally complaining is that they're having a hard time controlling the narrative. It's been
Yeah.
slipping
Could,
from
could
them,
you explain that?
100%.
Could you explain that word misinformation when it's being used? Like, what do they really mean? What's the meaning of
So
that word?
they,
What is misinformation?
yeah, all right. So fundamentally, misinformation is when I launch a campaign that is funded to deceive people.
Yeah.
To, let's say, I'll give you a good case. What's going on in Iran, right?
Mm.
So what is going on in Iran, because I know Iranian people, because I have my sources inside, is people, uh, uh, the middle class, they call it the bazaar, the traders, were very unhappy with a certain fluctuation in the currency, and then they went on the street to complain about it, right? So that is the truth.
And
Now,
that's democratic, right? You, as a citizen, should have the right.
that's a
Yeah.
sign of a healthy society, by the way.
True.
Any
Yes.
movement on the street, when it's for a good reason, to get the
Yeah.
government to fix it, is fantastic.
Yes.
It's a healthy thing. But the West, because they have plans for Iran, they started a misinformation campaign showing you what's happening on the street as if it is people coming down on the street because they don't want the government anymore, because they want to change the government. It is not that. So this is a misinformation campaign. But also now they're very sophisticated. So within that misinformation campaign, they have people on the ground that they are that work for them because of bribes and all that. They get them to go down on the street and burn stuff and break stuff and all that, so they can intensify the misinformation campaign, because in Washington they want to change the regime, right?
Yeah.
So they ride that wave. They always do that. Actually,
Yeah.
if we study something called color revolutions, this is what they always do. So in Syria, for instance, in 2011, it was legitimate protests. It's like, yeah, these people have issues and the government needs to look at them. But the
Mm.
West comes in and then brings weapons, and then this shooting starts, and then they say the government is shooting at them, and this is a tyrannical government, and then they play that dynamic to eventually topple the government. And the fact that they eventually settled with putting an ex Takfiri, Al Qaeda terrorist as a president tells you that they really don't care.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
They don't care at all,
Bro, I saw
right?
yesterday Ursula von der Leyen, which is like the head of EU or something, like the top
Yeah,
top dog, one of the top dogs
yeah,
of EU. visiting Jolani, which
Yeah.
is his Al Qaeda name, Ahmed al Shara, the new
Yes,
president or
yes.
leader of Syria. She was visiting him at the same time as his troops in Aleppo, in Arabic it's Halab, were massacring Kurdish people who probably lived there for maybe decades.
Forever.
And screaming
100%.
Allahu Akbar and everything like that. And she still go there visiting him, and
Yeah.
simultaneously they telling us we have a problem with radical Islam. But
Right?
it's like my head can't wrap itself around what's happening.
Understandably so. Understandably so. And she doesn't have a problem when she tells you on the other from the other side of her mouth that Islam is not suitable, but she doesn't have a problem uh, doing business with that kind of Islam and saying she did that. If you see the video, because that guy believes he cannot shake hands with a
Yes, yes,
woman,
yeah, yeah,
right? And she's
yeah,
very happy to do that and accept him, and very happy to accept someone that was on the State Department's list as wanted for
yeah.
$10 million.
Mm,
This tells you the hypocrisy. It is a hypocrisy. Actually, van der Leyen and Kyla Kallas, or whatever her name is, the defense lady, that whole architecture of Europe being ruled by unelected people. These are not
mm,
elected people, Ali. Van der Leyen is not an elected official. She's not. She's a higher. So the powers that be, major military industrial complex, World Economic Forum, the Klaus Schwabs, the Larry Fink, they bring these people for agendas that would suit them. They're really not elected from the people. They don't answer to the people because there's no election for their position. They're not members of parliaments of European governments where they have to answer to their people. They're placed there for agendas, and mostly these agendas are NATO related, are Washington led. And if Washington says it's okay, he's a terrorist, but it's fine. We need to
yeah,
do business. We need to go into Syria because there's a lot of minerals, oils, gas, geopolitics advantage for Israel. At the end of the day, the whole government collapse of Syria is for the sake of Israel, because Bashar al-Assad and his father Hafez al-Assad were anti-Israel. They were helping Hezbollah in Lebanon. They even were helping Hamas. Also, Hamas for a period was anti-Bashar. Syria, and if you look at the geography of the area, the location is very strategic in terms of us people trying to defend ourselves from Israel. And Syria was on the Israeli agenda for a long time, because also what's very important for the Israelis is that mount called Mount Hermon, that high mountain. That mountain, that top of that mountain where there was a cross, actually, that cross was made of cedar wood, huge cross. That was there for 1,400 years. Somehow, when Israel took that mountain, I can't translate into high mountain, mountain in the top of the mountain, where there was a cross actually. I don't know what happened with,
yeah,
see, these
yeah,
things, these
yeah,
things.
yeah,
Anyway,
yeah. Be careful.
so when they took off that top of that mountain, that's such a strategic place because they can view Beirut, Damascus, the whole like area. They have direct fire on it, and they tried to take it in 1973, but Bashar al-Assad's father was able to take it back from them, and that was the line of conflict between Israel and Syria. So they
Mm,
took it. They took off the cross. It's like,
wow.
just what does it bother you? You want to
Yeah,
shoot from behind just move. Like, what does the cross have to do with anything to help you? They took it out
yeah,
because, yeah, Israel doesn't. I mean, let's not get into that. We can get into that
yeah.
later. So Israel always understood that Syria is a stumbling block, and that regime change was mainly the neocons, the Zionists in Washington, with the help of some Arab governments, also for links of gas and oil and for all kinds of things. Yeah, unfortunately, it is very sad to see, man. Syria, Ali, there are towns in Syria. There's a town, and people can check that information. There's a town called Ma'lula,
Mm,
where people not only are Christian communities, they're Christian communities that still spoke Aramaic, meaning imagine 2,000 years after Christ, the language that was used by Christ remains in one of these areas. And those takfiris went into it, and you know what they do. And the people who died, some people died defending that town, were people from Hezbollah, the
So
Shia
Muslim.
terrorists,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Muslim Shia terrorists, right?
yeah,
They were defending those villages against those takfiris. Yeah.
yeah. So what's the situation today now? Because we swept through history. We started with the, background of, we went kind of far back. Then we came to the civil war in Lebanon, and then we moved to the revolution in Iran, and then we spoke a bit about the Arab monarchies. We touched a little bit on Iraq. So this is basically the timeline where we went step by step. We touched on Syria, and now we are seeing what's happening in Iran, and we're also seeing what's happening in Lebanon, Israel, and all of these places. What would you say the situation is today? Like, where are we today? Where are we standing,
Yeah.
and how does it look? Where we're heading, and what's happening? Because even in Lebanon, we have internal strife between these different religions and
Yeah.
everything. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Where are we today? But it's good we did this panorama of the past in
yeah,
chronological order, just
and we
to be
explain the
able to
color
unpack.
revolutions so people
Yes.
know
Yes.
the purpose of them, and we're seeing maybe Iran.
100%.
Yeah,
100%. So we agree on the fundamentals that the Zionist project is an expansionist project. They want more land. They want to expand. One, two. They've always believed that in order for them to rule over that area, West Asia, to be comfortable ruling, because they are the minority at the end of the day, they need the people of the area being divided into groups of sects battling each other, right? That's called the Odeh Diyanon plan for your viewers. Odeh Diyanon. You can search for this plan. It was written in 1982 by a prominent thinker in Israel. That says basically what we need to do, ideally, to get Israel comfortable, is to divide Syria, Lebanon, and eventually Iraq into statelets led by a sectarian leader, and it is for the sects. So, Alawi state, a Maronite state in Lebanon, a Druze state in southern Syria, maybe another Druze state in Lebanon. The Shias, all state, or we transfer them away because these people are unyielding. They refuse. They're going to fight back Israel. That's it. That is what it is. So, or finish them or move them. And then, a Sunni state in the middle in Syria, and a Kurdish state, mind you, the Kurds,
of
and a
course.
Kurdish state. Like this, we are the Jewish state. And then around us is all kinds of states. Because fundamentally, they cannot be a religious place for one religion, and then next to them you've got Lebanon, you've got two religions or three religions and 18 sects. It just doesn't look good, right?
And they all cooperate and stuff. That's going to be a danger.
Yeah, because their narrative is built around that we are that state for that religion, and then everyone around us is the Muslim savages that want to kill us. Right? This is fundamentally the narrative they love to sell to the West. That we're not doing anything wrong. We're just being here. We just need
Mm.
a tiny country for us to live in, and these savages around us, they want to kill us. This
And
is
it was
what they want to
ours
portray.
3,000 years ago, it promised and stuff like that.
Exactly,
Yeah.
100%.
So we
So
have the right.
having Lebanon next to them, and Lebanon, mind you, Lebanon, by constitution, our president has to be Christian.
Mhm.
It's by constitution. And then the prime minister is a Muslim Sunni. The head of parliament is a Muslim Shia. And then also the Druze need to have their representation. So it is a what do you call it, a diversified kind of system. Well, on the other hand, not next door, it's no. It's just us. If you're part of the tribe, you're here. If not, you get out. You get out. So,
Mm.
so this is the division there. So what do we have today in Lebanon? October 7th, when October 7th, this is a good landmark, right? When October 7th happened, and the Palestinians decided, you know what, we're in this cage and we've had enough. We need, and the world is forgetting about us, mind you. On October 6th, the whole world had gone past that story. They forgot about these people suffering miserably in that open air prison, right? So they decided to break out, take prisoners for exchange them with their prisoners, and to make a noise, to get the world to see what was going on, because it was a time where the Abrahamic Accords were going to almost be signed by Saudi Arabia, where Israel becomes normalized with Saudi Arabia, then the Palestinian cause would have been gone. Forget it. They're going to suffer until the end, and then they're going to be replaced. So that thing happened. In Lebanon, Hezbollah was like, all right, what do we do morally? This is a very, like, should we just let them do their thing without our support? Because Hezbollah was strong. That kicked out Israel and was able to manage some sort of deterrent, like to a deterrent force, where Israel was no longer able to do whatever it wants because Hezbollah was strong. So there was peace for 18 years back. There was nothing, hardly anything. So they had the power, and the question was fundamentally a moral question. And the late leader of Hezbollah, Sayyid Hassan, explained it afterwards. He's like, we found ourselves in a not dilemma, but we had to answer the question: should we let them do whatever they can, or can we support in any way? And the idea was that let's engage Israel kinetically from the southern Lebanon, so from northern Israel, to relieve some forces towards that front. Like this, we can relieve the Gazans. And
So
they
it was
started.
more. So it was more about a moral question from Hezbollah perspective, or was it for
Yes,
self-interest? Because some people would say no, only self-interest.
no, no,
Okay.
100%. They actually, when you see Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah describing it, you understand. And we know this guy. He's very, like, he used to be very credible. Actually, in Israel, they used to believe him more than they believed their government, because he says it the way it is. He said, this is where we find ourselves. We don't want to open a front that would eventually bring destruction to the civilians in the southern Lebanon, these villagers, these people living their lives, opening businesses, because we can risk having Israel bombing them. But at the same time, morally, we can't stand by and watch. We can't. So there was like a middle ground of engaging Israel. And actually, on the 8th of October, the engagement for the first few days was within disputed Lebanese lands. So the rockets weren't even sent into what you call Israel. They were sent into the Sheba farms and that kind of patch of land that disputedly it is Lebanese occupied.
Mm.
So this is where they engaged them. And then later days, you would see they were trying to destroy all their assets, these
So
cameras, sensors, radars, all the infrastructure of security that they had on the south. Hezbollah was destroying it. Hezbollah had 100 and something thousand rockets. If they wanted really to open a war, they would have launched all over the place. First of all, they don't hit civilians, and I'll get to the proof that they really do not believe in killing civilians unnecessarily. They try to veer away from it. And I'll tell you why. And the proof is when Israel, with the help of the United States, threw 84,000 tons of explosives on one spot in the southern suburb of Lebanon. I was there in Beirut. Now I'm not. It was like, 7 kilometers. So we felt it. We heard 84 tons in one place to assassinate one person. It's like, whatever happened to Sniper? Like, what world are we living in? They killed him, right?
mm.
Any reasonable thinker would say, you know what? This is the leader of these people, the leader of that resistance. You've been leading them to success and safety and dignity for 32 years. One would assume that they have 100 and something thousand rockets. They're going to make it rain on Israel, right? Right? They
Yeah,
didn't.
yeah, of course. Mm.
They didn't. Not at all. They didn't make train. They didn't go launching on killing civilians and Israelis just for the sake of killing. Nothing. They took it because fundamentally these people, what I like also about them, they're pious. They answer to God. If you win on the battlefield but you lose in the eyes of God, well, then you lost.
Yeah.
Anyway, so where are we today? So Hezbollah tried to engage Israel, but then we also know that Israel had plans to go in and finish Hezbollah, because Israel refuses to have anyone on their borders that would say no to them. And they had done three, I think, 2017, 18, and 19. They did war games, and they used Cyprus, because it's the same topography as Lebanon, to do war games on the possibility of attacking Hezbollah. So there were plans to destroy Hezbollah. Then the pager attack came. That tells you that the pager was planned since 2015. So they had plans to attack Hezbollah, because some Lebanese would tell you, oh, it was because Hezbollah engaged Israel, now Israel retaliated. It's like, no, BS. We understand Israel's history. Israel always uses any attack to enlarge itself, and this is what they did in Gaza. This is what they try to do. So anyway, after Hezbollah engaged for a while, eventually Israel launched the 66-day bombing campaign that started with the pagers, then Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah, then the successor of Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah, Sayyid Hashim Safiyuddin. Then there was a day where they did 1,400 airstrikes in one day, and that, some people say Washington must have been involved, because there's not enough amount of planes and to land them and to maintain them and pilots and all that, but whatever. So they did that attack on Lebanon. And during that period, Hezbollah, if you look at their attacks on Israel, and you drew it on a curve in terms of quantity and quality, you'd see that Hezbollah was able to absorb the strong hit against it, and then start gathering itself and launching back. And you'd see the increase in the amount of rockets, and you also start seeing the increase on leaving military sites and starting towards the residential areas. And the last day of attacks, it was 194 or 184 rockets. Some of them were city center, and it was starting to. So Israel wasn't comfortable at all seeing that. And Israel wasn't comfortable that its people are realizing that their government cannot protect them with the Iron Dome and all that crap they sell to their people. So Israel used Washington to come to Lebanon and say, all right, let's do a ceasefire. Right? And it was, what's his name, that guy, the ex-IDF. They actually, funny enough, they sent you, Washington comes as a mediator, right?
Yeah.
Everybody knows that Washington is on the side of Israel, but they do
course.
play this mediator thing. And then,
Yeah.
to add insult to injury, their head envoy was an ex-Israeli soldier. His name will come anyway. So they bullied the Lebanese government, and
Was that
also
Hochstein, something like that? No?
Hochstein,
Yeah,
Amos
yeah.
Hochstein,
Yeah,
Amos
yeah.
Hochstein came. All right, so Amos Hochstein comes, and then there was a ceasefire agreement made. And Hezbollah always, like Hamas, at the end of the day, they care about the civilian losses, because these are their families. These are
Yeah.
their families, their cousins, their mothers, their aunties. It's not like a different thing that Israel tries to portray it as if the people that are fighting don't care about the civilians. So they agreed to the ceasefire. What happened since that day? Israel has been breaking that ceasefire constantly,
Every day.
every day. 100%. According to the UN, they have broke it 10,000 times. And they've been bombing Lebanon every day. Whenever they see anything that might be something related to resistance, they just bomb it. So they're winning. That's the problem with Israel. They win from the sky because they have overwhelming power from the sky to drop bombs on you. And then after you sign a ceasefire, they keep winning by assassinating and killing and whatever. That's the problem. And because it's all sponsored by Washington, and Washington is the bully in the
Yeah.
Lebanon, period. So this is what happened in Lebanon. So also what happened during that time of the ceasefire, just before or just after, Lebanon needed to elect a new prime minister and a new president. So Washington came in with all its power, and they elected a prime minister that is very Western in his policy. He's very Washington in his policy. The president is less, he's a bit sovereign, but he doesn't have enough powers. And then now, so after the ceasefire, they started working in internal Lebanese politics to try to get the Lebanese government to do their work by getting the Lebanese army to disarm the resistance. And they're not being successful because at the end, again, the Lebanese army is from the people, and the resistance is from the people, and is just one society. And the Lebanese army, including the head of staff of the Lebanese army, who is America canceled his visit. He was supposed to visit Washington, but then in his statement on TV, he called Israel the enemy. And then Washington got upset and canceled his visit. This is how bad it is.
Yeah.
So in Lebanon, they're trying to get the Lebanese government and the Lebanese people to turn against Hezbollah and to create a civil war like they did in 1976, and then creative chaos like we spoke earlier before the recording. So that's the case in Lebanon. In Syria, they were able to topple the government. Israel is getting everything Israel wants in terms of land and everything. And then there is, so the Zionist agenda is to finish the axis of resistance, we call it. Okay? So who makes part of that axis? You had the Houthis in Yemen, they are allies. Hezbollah is a major part and is strong. Hezbollah is back to 100%. So just so people to know, Hezbollah is back at 100%. And actually, I'd say 120% because morally and spiritually, they're really angry for what took
Mm.
place.
But people
Really,
would
really.
say that they're not back because they lost the supply lines from Syria, and that they have took so huge losses, and that's
Yeah,
why they're not responding to Israel still attacking.
yeah. No, that's not the case. That's not the case. Actually, let me tell you the truth about it is that when you have a organized Syria with a local government that controls his land, uh, the trading route for military assistance is always regulated by that government, and the quantities are regulated by that government, and all that. What took place now with so many mercenaries holding
Yeah.
so many parts of Syria, it's all about the money. So actually,
Yes.
what I'm hearing reports that actually the line is bigger and cheaper.
Wow.
Yeah, the line is bigger and cheaper. So
Mm.
and understandably so. Look, Hezbollah got created under all kinds of intelligence, satellites, technologies, people on the ground infiltrating, and they were able for 40 years to not only get created, build a formidable force, and get all the weapons they need under the eyes of all kinds of Western intel and satellites and infiltrators. So they know how to sort themselves out. They're designed that way because they organically grew under that pressure. So I never worried. Even when Syria fell and people were like, "What's going to happen?" It's like, how do drugs get transferred all over the globe? You can't really do 100%. When people want to smuggle something, it gets smuggled most of the time, right?
Mm.
So no, they are back at 100%. They're not replying because they don't want to play into Israel's hand. Israel wants them. Israel wants them to shoot back so Israel can come back and level the place.
Yeah.
That's the
And
case with
it's gonna
Israel.
affect civilians in the end, mostly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
100%.
of
Because
course.
the resistance, whether the resistance in Gaza, the Houthis, Hezbollah, Iran, always understood that if you want to fight back, your enemy dominates the skies.
Yeah.
Anything above ground is going to be gone like that. So if you want to fight back and have half a chance, you have to be underground. Now, in Gaza, the strata, the soil, is mostly sand, beach, not rocky, and not definitely not marble. In Iran and a large part of Lebanon, it's rocky, hard rock mountains. and green mountains, high mountains, where Hezbollah over the years was able to not only dig tunnels, create almost cathedral size underground architecture, right? Because of the strata, because of the type of material they're working for, rocky mountains. And the southern Lebanon is all hills and mountains, all of it. It is not like Gaza flat. So you can imagine if in Gaza, Hamas, that has been, sealed off the rest of the world for 17 years, Hamas was able to create that kind of infrastructure under the ground. You can imagine what Hezbollah has. And even bunker busters do not go through. So what Israel tried to do is to hit the entrances and close the entrances. They did the same thing in Iran. With the nuclear facilities that are underground, they tried to close up the entrances to these structures. But they know that. The resistance understands that. So from one exit, they have 2, 3 exits. So that resistance, the axis, has built itself from an embryo of a resistance to a full-fledged fighting force under these conditions and understanding these conditions. Actually, Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah once said, whenever there is a war, we take it as a premise that with their first few days of bombings, we're going to lose 30% of our assets. So what we do, we build 130% because 30% is going to be gone anyway. So they understand how things work and they plan accordingly. And ideologically, at the end of the day, it's the spirit. If I decide that no foreigner is going to steal my land or step on my land because my land and the dignity of my land is like the dignity of my mother and my sister, forget about it. Forget about it. And this is how they believe. You add on that the Shia Karbala story, and you've got people who refuse. So they're back at 100%. Now, Syria is a problem. Syria fundamentally, yes, we lost a lot. No one expected. So that axis, again, to go back to the axis to explain. So Israel wants to finish that axis. Finish. They feel that now they've got the momentum. Washington is on their side. The world doesn't care because the world is got desensitized after they saw in Gaza. They're just desensitized. You can do whatever you want and get away with it. So they have the Houthis in Yemen, and they're trying everything, including the Somaliland thing they did. Then they have Hezbollah that's back at 100%. You've got factions in Iraq that are serious factions. Kataib Hezbollah and Al-Hashd al-Shabi, who got created to fight ISIS, are there, and they are allies of the Axis. And then you've got the head of that I don't like to call it Axis. It has a negative connotation, but because of the World War II, right? But that alliance, right? The head of that alliance is Iran. So, and you can see, whatever you look of what's happening in West Asia, you have to see it from that prism. That Washington and Tel Aviv want to erase that axis, right? And this is what they're trying to do. So that is why when Netanyahu visited Washington, visited Miami, Mar-a-Lago, and sat down with Trump, the serious analysts were like, yeah, he wants 2 things. He wants a green light to attack Lebanon again, and he wants a green light or the assistance in attacking Iran. And this is what people are expecting to see. Some people were like, maybe Washington will finish up Venezuela to consolidate oil and whatever, because Iran is a serious foe. It is a serious. It's not Iraq. It's not Afghanistan. It's not Iraq 2003. It's not Afghanistan. This is Iran. And the thing with Iran that people do not realize is that when you do a revolution in 1979, and part of the ideology of that revolution is anti-imperialism, then you are reasonable enough to know within yourself that eventually it's going to come to a showdown, right? And they've known that. And the confirmation came in 2003. The way the US went with Iraq, they were like, yeah, it's eventually going to come to us. Now, meanwhile, we will try to play fair with Washington, but Washington doesn't play fair. Washington doesn't play, equal to equal. It likes to boss you around. The Iranians are not going to be bossed around. They tried. They tried in 2015 with the JCPOA agreement for the nuclear powers. They have open access to the IAEA from the UN to inspect everything. Uh, but Washington always answers with more sanctions, more bullying, more demands. And even what was insult to injury is that the last time they sat down to negotiate, it was just before Israel attacked them the first time. And then after that, Washington attacked. Steve Witkoff was the negotiator. He's a friend of Trump who was negotiating with the Iranians. They sat down, I think, on a Friday, Ali, and they were like, "Yeah, all right, what are we gonna do? Let's do this. Like, all right, fine, good stuff. Let's sit down again on Saturday because Friday is day off." And then, knowingly, what we understood from Trump later, that Witkoff, when he was negotiating, looking at them eye to eye, saying, "All right, let's do this, let's do that. Fine, it's good stuff, good talk. Let's sit down again in a couple of days." He knew that, or Washington knew that it's gonna bomb Iran or Israel is going to bomb Iran. So
Yeah.
Iran got to a place like we're trying everything with these people. We are trying everything. And what was good is that even the Iranian people who are, they call them the reformer side, the people who are like, let's negotiate, let's play nice. Washington is a good guy. They saw even that faction was like, no, Washington's not a good guy. We can't work with them.
Yeah.
The same thing happened with the Russians. The
Yeah.
same thing happened. There was a lot of Russians. They used to call them Atlanticist Russians that were like, yeah, let's deal with the West. The West is good, freedom, democracy. And then they realized, no, Washington is not that. Maybe the Western people are that, but Washington does not represent these people.
Yeah.
So now, yeah, it is a matter of finishing that alliance, that axis, cleaning it up because Israel wants to go greater Israel, and Washington has decided that Israel must rule the place, be the big boss once we take off Iran. And also, I'll say one more thing that the whole geoeconomic structure, oil and gas pipelines, AI data centers, Ben Gurion Canal for seafaring, everything, the architecture that Washington wants to put in place, Israel is at the center of it. Israel is like the faucet of all that. They can close it, they can open it. That's why this is this is how they get the ability to play big boss in the area. It's not only military; it's these faucets for economy and gas and oil, and there's a lot of gas in the Levant, Ali. That can major reserves in front of in the beach front or the sea front, the Mediterranean of Lebanon, of Syria, and of Gaza and Israel. So yeah, this is where we are.
Yeah, and what do you think about the coming this year, 2026? We're all expecting huge
Yeah.
damage and war and destruction,
Yes.
unfortunately, and we're seeing starts of it in Iran. They're burning civilian stuff like buildings, banks,
Yeah.
hospitals, mosques, and just
Mm.
grocery stores. They're just ruining stuff, and they say that it's a liberation movement of the people. And we're all still expecting round two of the Iran-Israel war. What do you think the chances are for Iran's survival in this, or what do you think the outcome will be? And what do you think the Arab states? Where are they standing? The GCC nations.
Very important question. Yes, 100%. The way you laid it and entering the GCC element to it is very important as well because there is some shift. There is some shift. So okay, so 2026, I see it personally and humbly. I'm not a like, but I see war. The
Yeah,
theme is war because look, you have four flashpoints. Bar Gaza, you've got Iran, Israel. That's a flashpoint that can go, not can go, will go regional because this time the Axis realized that we cannot let the initiative of Washington or the initiative of the West to take us all, each one alone
time. Yeah,
like they tried to do with the Houthis alone,
yeah,
Gaza alone, Lebanon alone, and now Iran alone. I think they have realized, and I think you see it with public statements from the Houthis, from the Iraqis, from Lebanon, from Iran, that this time around, no, it's going to be all of us. And a fundamental change also happened in the area, is where the previous war, whether it's Hezbollah war or whatever the Palestinians do, it was always a war to get Israel to restrain itself. It was always that. It's like, we're not resisting to finish that project. We're not trying to finish that colonial project. What we're trying to do is to get that colonial project to behave, right? Stop killing us. Stop stealing our land, or maybe retreat a little bit from the land you stole. It was never, let's do it, let's dance, the whole thing. I think this time around, it is pretty clear to Iran and to the rest of the Axis that this time it's the final showdown. That's it, and everybody agrees. All analysts, military analysts, they agree that this time around it's like, all right, let's do it. Yeah, a lot of civilians are gonna die, but it's been 77 years. You guys are unhinged. You remain what they want. You don't want to play fair. You don't want to exist with us in the area. You want to ethnically cleanse us. You want to enlarge your project. And you got us in the corner. And you know what? Let's do it. So, what we call in Arabic, Al-Harb al-Kubra, the Great War. It
They
was
have their
never the great.
Armageddon, right? It's also
Yeah,
great.
yeah, yeah. And also on their side, that's the crazy part of it. And
Yeah.
the side of a lot of the evangelist Christians, Armageddon. And
Yes, yes, yes.
that's also very ominous, eh? That spiritual element. I've
Yeah.
unpacked it, I've studied the whole eschatology of it. But to stay on the geopolitical conflict, so this time around the fight is going to be winner takes all. That's one. So that's the Iranian flashpoint, okay? Then you've got the Ukraine flashpoint. It seems that even though Trump said he wants to end that war, it doesn't look like it. The flow of weapons remains the same. The whole narrative is that, no, we're selling it to the Europeans. The Europeans are using it in Ukraine. Like, we stopped the flow. Bullshit. So powers that be, the deep state, I think, wants to keep that war going. The escalation. It's like, look, it's fine and dandy warring people fight, but it's not when you try to send drones to kill the president of your enemy. And these drones that were fired, I forgot the name of the area. It's a presidential compound. The seizing of the oil tankers of the Russians, giving Ukraine, the HIMARS and all these ATACMS that can strike deep within Russia, gives me the impression that that war is on the escalatory directive, right? And Russia hitting some oil infrastructure with the Urishnik. That's the second time they used that Urishnik rocket. I invite your listeners to look at that thing. That's proper. The thing, the rockets exits the atmosphere and then turns around and goes down with a speed of 16,000 kilometers. That's 16 times 16 Mach. The speed. The NATO has nothing that can not only stop it, nothing that can see it.
Yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
right.
I've seen the videos. It looks scary.
Yeesh,
It
that
looks
thing is
like
proper, eh? And then
yeah,
that warhead splits into 6 of them or whatever.
yeah,
So that flashpoint, the Ukraine flashpoint, is also on the escalatory level. And then we got Latin America. You know,
mm,
you got 10,000 soldiers on the coast of Venezuela, and kidnapping the president didn't change anything. De facto, on the ground, the Maduro government is still running Venezuela. The oil is not secured. Yesterday, the CEOs of these oil companies said it's uninvestable, meaning it's not secure enough for to go spend any dollar there. So the oil is still Venezuelan. Nothing has changed. So that's it. So you got these 3 flashpoints in 2026, and they are all heading towards escalation, not de-escalation. So yes, it is a year of war. Now, which flashpoint is going to kick off first? We don't know. No one knows. But for certain, the military solution in their eyes to Iran is the only thing they still have left. And what they're trying to do now, Ali, inside, is not even trying to topple the government. It is very methodical destruction of public defense, meaning they've burned. So in one city, they burned a large number of fire trucks. They're shooting at health service, like a Red Cross. They're trying to get the civic society not be able to run shit when shit hits the fan. It is very ominous what these people are trying to do. And remember, Iran has borders with 27 countries, I think. Don't quote me on that, but many countries. So infiltrators are very easy. And within Iran, you've got many ethnicities. The Kazakhs, the Azerbaijanis, the Kurds, the Afghanis, the Pakistan. All that. So it is easy to infiltrate. But these people are disposable. So when you are an intelligence asset, you're embedded. But once you act, you show up to the light, then that's it. You're burnt, or you have to leave, or you're caught. So they're using them all, and I don't know how much supply they have of them. It seems that the Iranian government was able to quench things down. Last night was way lower than the 2 other nights. So this is what they're going for. Yes, I think. And to answer the last part of your question, the Arab governments, I think Saudi Arabia has realized that staying just blind loyalty to Washington is going to cost Saudi Arabia in the long term. I think they've realized that. And I've heard stuff you will confirm eventually about the petrodollar, this architecture of keeping the dollar afloat as the world currency reserve by Saudi Arabia only selling its oil in dollars and only investing the sales money into American bonds, and to keep that cycle of the dollar hegemony system. I think yesterday I've heard, I don't know if it's credible, that the Saudis not only are selling their oil to China in yuan, they're also not investing the money into bonds, into the debt of the American system. And that's strategic. That's no joke. That shows me. And also the headbutting between Saudi Arabia and the UAE regarding Somaliland, regarding Yemen. That tells me that Jeddah or Saudi Arabia is trying to reposition itself a bit on the multipolar front, not the unipolar Washington front. So that's a tactic move. And also Turkey, the same thing. It seems that Turkey has helped Iran the last few days a lot with intelligence reports on anything of these infiltrators moving from the western side east into Iran. And it seems that Turkey called Iran and said there's an urgent matter, there's a bunch of guys coming in. So that kind of tactical moves of these 2 countries, Muslim countries, Turkey and Saudi Arabia, because they both are witnessing that Washington has gone gung-ho. It's gone Western style, cowboy, boom, boom, we shoot and then we discuss later. And they're worried. So there is a move towards that. Now, I don't know how much it's going to translate, but for now, there's a little realignment there. But definitely, Ali, 2026, I believe 2026 is going to be a year like 1945, like you say, before World War II, after World War II. Because I think 2026 not only is going to be a lot of conflict, I think during the fog of war, the economic, monetary architecture that is in the West is going to be kind of restructured, where Washington can do away with all the 38 trillion in debt, do away with fiat currency, paper money, and maybe bring in digital blockchain currencies. They want to reset. They've been wanting to reset for a while. And I think they will use the fog of war to reset. A lot of the reset would be digital identity. You can't go on the internet if we don't know who you are, for security measures. So yeah, it's going to be a year where, 10 years from today, we're going to be speaking. We're going to be, it was post 2026, not, pre 2026, not post 2026, because there's going to be a lot of movement. And I think you agree, right?
Yeah, like the 9/11 incident. We have 2
Like
different.
that as well,
Yeah.
100%. changing of the architecture of the globe. And remember when Bush the son said after 9/11, he said, "Look, guys," to the globe, he was speaking. It's like you're either with us or against us. That kind of sort of thing. But let me tell you one more thing, just so people can understand. There's a tripod in the East. The mainland of Eurasia, there's a tripod that each part of that tripod understands that if we lose one leg, we fall down. And that tripod is Russia, Iran, and China. The three of them strategically, fundamentally, long term understand that if Washington brings down one part, the other parts become weak. And they understand that this is the national security strategy of Washington. And that's why I think some people think Russia is going to sell out Iran or turn its back. And very, very important thing to mention, because we mentioned Russia and its alliances, and I think we have I'm just going to take 2 minutes to unpack this. What happened in Syria? Because a lot of people, say, well, the Russians, they backstabbed Syria, they walked out on Syria, they
Yes.
were using Syria. Fundamentally, let's unpack. Country to country relationship. There's no BFF, right?
No.
There's no we love you, or I love you. I'm gonna be with you forever. That isn't how it works. It's when strategies and futures and goals align,
Yeah.
we're together. When they diverge, we move a bit away. It's very pragmatic, right? So what happened was, and from within this Assad ex government, the stories are that after 2018, when those terrorists were put in Idlib and the rest of Syria was getting, tidied up, things were coming back to normal, but then the sanctions hit. The sanctions were really hard. Like you have cut off that nation from any ability to make money by selling its wheat or its oil, and you've closed it in a way where no money is coming in. So people were getting desperate and poor. The UAE stepped in and told Bashar al Assad, look, dude, we can relieve those sanctions. We can talk to Washington. But we need you to just, play at least. Kick the Iranians out. Like, at least, limit their influence. So we can go to Washington and say, look, Bashar al Assad is going to play ball. Let's release the sanctions a bit. This is terrible. This is unfair. And Bashar al Assad did that. Bashar al-Assad even went into closing offices of the IRGC, taking down posters of Soleimani, not answering the Iranians when there was concerns, not cooperating with the Iranians, and the Iranians felt it, and the Iranians weren't happy. But at the end of the day, the Iranians' role, like the Russians' role, this is a sovereign nation.
Yeah.
Whatever the president wants, it's his business, even
Of
if it
course.
doesn't allow it. So and Saudi Arabia also joined into that. Come on, Bashar, we are the Arab brothers. We will not. We tell you it's a good thing. Do what we want. We will help you with Washington.
Wow. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like a salesman in the market,
Unfortunately.
right? Should be
So
careful.
Bashar al-Assad did that. Actually,
Yeah.
also Russia felt the distancing. Even Russia felt the distancing. And when Russia told Bashar, look, let's negotiate with the Turks, to Russia, Bashar rejected fundamentally because the Turks were still occupying. He's like, no, let them withdraw from my land, then I'll
Yeah.
discuss.
Referring
But
to Idlib,
there
right?
was, hmm?
Referring to Idlib. He wanted them to leave.
Yes,
Um,
100%.
yeah.
So this was the fatal mistake. This was the fatal mistake. Meanwhile, while all this was happening, all kinds of tech stuff where the Israeli, the Mossad, the CIA were infiltrating his armies. And if at the end of the day, the salary of a general was like $70,
Yeah. A
when the
month.
ISIS guy's salary is $2,000. So this whole demoralization, infiltration, alienation of Iran, almost gold shoulder to Russia. Of course, Washington didn't play ball. Of course, what the Arabs were talking about, maybe they thought it was going to be happening. Maybe they don't know. I'm not saying they backstabbed Bashar al-Assad. Maybe they thought that Washington told them, let him do that, and then we will, whatever.
Oh,
That
yeah, yeah.
whole dynamic got to a place where, Russia said, you know what? This is what it is. This is what's happening. Am I going to fight and open another front other than the Ukrainian front to keep this guy on the, or am I just call my losses and leave it? And this is what happened. They called their losses and left it, but they still maintain a presence on the Mediterranean. In terms of Iran, it's a whole different ballgame. If you look at the map, you understand that Iran is like on the belly of Russia. There's Iran, there's Azerbaijan, a few of these Kazakhstan, Central Asian countries, and this is Russia. So if
Yeah,
Washington is embedded there, Russia is going to have a problem from the west with Ukraine and a problem from the south, and Russia will never allow that. And even if you look at it in the map, you'll see there's Iran, Afghanistan, and China. That's also not so. It's a whole different ball game. I think yes, they are allies because they see fundamental. Actually, it's Washington that made them brothers.
yeah,
It's the animosity of Washington on both China and Russia that made China and Russia cooperate more to stay alive. And
yeah,
actually, they're creating, monetary systems. They're creating another SWIFT to be able to do interbanking together. So the animosity of Washington is getting many of the global southern countries to say, you know what, let's work together because this guy is a lunatic and he's coming for us, right?
mm,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, great, Raed. We've been recording now for 1 hour and a half. It's been a real pleasure listening to parts of your experience as a Lebanese citizen and also your outlook on what's happening in the region. I'm really grateful that you came on this show. I hope we can do it again in the future when
I
some
loved it,
other
man.
stuff comes up.
I loved it. Thank you so much, Ali. And I like that your instinct is in tune with all what's going on, and you asked exactly the right questions. And there's a lot to unpack. So
Yeah.
I'll be happy anytime you to come back. Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Raed. And if anyone would like to follow you and hear more from you, where would they be able to find you?
Well, for now, so I used to do this professionally almost, but for myself, I decided to go on social media 2 years ago with the guys. I think so. You can find me on X. It's the Levantine Man, or my name is there, Raed Jamal.
Sure.
Yes.
I will also put a link to your X account so people can follow if they're interested. Instagram, something like that, you don't have?
Mm-mm. Just on
No.
X for now.
Okay. Great and right. So thank you very much for taking the time and sharing the knowledge that you have. And I wish you a good day forward and let's stay in touch.
For sure. Loved it. Thank you so much,
Thank you
Ali.
very much.
Thanks.
Thank you.